All right, let's dive into this explainer and try to unpack something I know so many of us struggle with. Why do we feel completely, totally trapped by this constant need to be productive? If you've ever felt like your entire life is just one giant to-do list and you are literally running out of time to actually live it, well, you're definitely not alone. Today, we're going to explore the fascinating science and philosophy behind exactly why we feel this way and, much more importantly, how we can finally break free. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the productivity guilt epidemic, look at why time seems to speed up, discuss the cost of complacency, compare doing mode versus being mode, and finish up with how to design your defining moments. So let's get right into part one, the productivity guilt epidemic. I want to start with a phenomenon that plagues so many of us, literally every single day. Think about this for a second. Have you ever tried to just relax after a super long day? You finally sit down on the couch to watch a movie, but instead of actually resting, you just feel this nagging, low-grade anxiety that you should be doing something quote-unquote useful. It's like this constant background hum whispering, you could be doing more. Get this, that feeling? It is not a character flaw. A 2026 Frontiers in Organizational Psychology study actually looked into this, and they found that a staggering 78% of knowledge workers feel guilty during their leisure time. And that's even after they've completely finished all their tasks for the day. You've hit your deadlines, your inbox is totally clear, but for some reason, just sitting still feels like a failure. So where does this come from? Well, this biological response is fueled by a massive cultural shift that philosopher Joseph Paper and modern thinker Andrew Taggart call total work. It is literally the process by which human beings are transformed into workers and nothing else. In this framework, work becomes the absolute center of human life. We actually start to believe that our destiny, our whole reason for being here, is just to work. We even optimize our downtime, right? We meditate just so we can focus better at the office, or we track our sleep just so we can perform better the next day. It's wild. Decades ago, Joseph Piper asked this absolutely profound question. Can human existence be fulfilled in being exclusively a workaday existence? And the answer, of course, is no. But we are trapped in this endless loop of optimizing our productivity, and in the process, we're completely losing the deeper meaning of life. We've taken this idea of agency, the idea that we have to constantly change the world and cross things off our lists, and we've applied it to ourselves with this ruthless, exhausting persistence. And because we are constantly in this go mode, your brain actually physically changes. Your anterior cingulate cortex learns to flag rest as an actual, literal threat. This results in a real clinical phenomenon called stress laxing, basically relaxation-induced anxiety. See, your nervous system calibrates to such an incredibly high baseline of stress that dropping below it feels physiologically wrong. Sitting still doesn't calm you down. It actually spikes your cortisol. Your body literally interprets the lack of stimulation as a danger signal. All right, moving on to part two, why time speeds up. Now, this relentless busyness doesn't just exhaust us physically, it literally warps how we perceive the passing of our own lives. Mechanical engineering professor Adrian Bijan has this fascinating theory. He says our brain acts kind of like a flipbook. As our neural networks grow larger and way more complex as they age, the electrical signals in our brains have to travel greater distances. Because of this, we process visual information slower, meaning we take in fewer frames per second. So time feels like a flipbook with a bunch of missing pages. You just flick to the end so much faster. And on top of that physical change, psychology professor Cindy Lustig points out that human nature plays a massive role here too. As we get older, we tend to settle into really rigid routines. We clock way fewer fresh, new experiences. We get stuck in old habits, and we lean heavily on familiar comforts. Because we aren't giving our brains anything juicy or remarkable to hang on to, our weeks and months just blend into this ill-defined blur. That lack of novelty actually accelerates our perception of time passing. Which brings us to part three, the cost of complacency. Because it turns out the exact same routine trap that speeds up our perception of time is also quietly destroying our closest relationships. The folks at Uncover Mental Health Counseling note that relationship complacency sneaks in under the disguise of comfort. It's like sinking deeply into a really cozy old armchair. At first, it's wonderful. You feel safe, it's super comfortable, but eventually, you sink so deep into that chair that you stop making any emotional investment. It becomes practically impossible to get up, move around, and actually engage with your partner. That wonderful comfort turns into an autopilot mode that slowly but surely erodes intimacy. So, how do you know if you're stuck in this routine trap? There are a few major warning signs to watch out for. Are you seeing a breakdown in meaningful communication? Like, are you only talking about chores and logistics now? Are you taking each other's presence for granted? Have date nights totally disappeared? Is there a complete absence of unexpected surprises? If you're nodding along to these, you are letting your connection wither on the vine. You've become predictable. And just like with how you perceive time, that total lack of novelty completely kills the spark. Okay, part 4. Doing mode versus being mode. So, what is the single root cause connecting all of this? The productivity guilt, time flying by, the relationship complacency? Well, it all comes back to our brain's default, doing mode. Specifically, it's a cognitive mechanism that Dr. Zindel Segal calls the discrepancy monitor. This monitor is constantly, obsessively hunting for mismatches. We create this idealized picture of how things should be, we compare it to our current reality, and then we frantically generate thoughts and actions to close that gap. We continually monitor our progress, endlessly striving for some distant point of satisfaction that always seems just out of reach. And here is the core conflict. Doing mode is fantastic for external tasks. If you're building a house or writing a quarterly report, you absolutely need doing mode. But applying it to our internal lives, that creates endless dissatisfaction. We just become obsessed with analyzing our flaws and maintaining our routines. That is exactly why we have to learn to intentionally shift our mental gears into being mode. In being mode, you aren't trying to close a gap. There's no problem to solve. You simply accept and allow the direct, intimate experience of the present moment, exactly as it is, without any immediate pressure to change a single thing. Finally, let's get to part 5, designing your defining moments. How do we actually fix this? How do we reclaim our minds, slow down time, and rescue our relationships? To snap out of our routines and stretch time back out, we can look to Chip and Dan Heath's brilliant book, The Power of Moments. Their core argument is so empowering. Defining moments don't just happen to us by chance. We can actively engineer them. We can literally manufacture memorable delight by boosting sensory pleasures, adding a fun element of surprise, and intentionally breaking our daily scripts. By intentionally infusing our lives with 4 specific elements, we can change everything. First is elevation, breaking the routine by boosting sensory input. Next is insight, triggering those aha moments that rewire how we see the world. Third is pride, actually capturing our achievements and courageous goals. And finally, connection, harnessing social moments to trigger deep intimacy. When you plan a totally surprise date night or you tackle a crazy new hobby with a friend, you are actively using these elements. You are creating a defining moment that expands your perception of time and bridges that emotional distance. At the same time, if we're going to cure this productivity guilt that keeps us totally trapped in the anxiety of doing mode, we have to structurally redesign our lives. You must fundamentally decouple your identity from your output. Hear me on this. You are not your work. You've got to schedule restorative downtime just as rigorously as you schedule your Zoom meetings. Redesign your environment. Turn off those work notifications on your phone so you aren't constantly triggered. And practice metacognitive awareness. When that guilt creeps up while you're relaxing on the couch, just notice it. Treat it as a learned biological response, not a command that you actually have to obey. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to take a hard look at your own life right now. Identify just one routine you can break today to stretch out your perception of time. Go plan a defining moment for someone you love. And most importantly, the very next time you feel that overwhelming urge to hustle right through your downtime, pause and ask yourself this final question. Are you just doing, or are you actually being?